Good day, everyone. I am Anri Shaira Crisel Al Visitation, and I am tasked to report the part 2 of economic policies of Philippine presidents and their impact.
The objectives of my report is to discuss the economic goals and policies under Joseph Estrada to Benigno Aquino III's presidency, to discuss the effectiveness of the programs adopted by the government in addressing the economic issues during Joseph Estrada to Benigno Aquino III's presidency. Before we proceed to the proper discussion, let me define these terms. Economic policies. An economic policy is a course of action that is intended to influence or control the behavior of the economy. Economic policies are typically implemented and administered by the government. Economic goals, generally desired by society and pursued by governments through economic policies. Investment is the dedication of an asset to attain an increase in value over a period of time. Investment requires a sacrifice of some present asset such as time, money, or effort. E-commerce. E-commerce is the buying and selling of goods and services over the internet. Macroeconomics. Macroeconomics studies the behavior of a country and how its policies impact the economy as a whole. It analyzes entire industries and economies rather than individuals or specific companies, which is why it's a top-down approach. Microeconomics. Microeconomics is the study of decisions made by people and businesses regarding the allocation of resources and prices at which they trade goods and services. Let's proceed to the introduction. The performance of the Philippine economy has been directly linked to the fortunes of the policies being implemented by the government in different sectors in the country. Parker 1999 stated that economic development is viewed as a set of interrelated changes in the structure of an economy that are required for its continued growth. The role of the state in the economic development has been implicitly tied to the individualistic political process that assumes that there are no goals or needs outside of those of the individual citizens. That's why CRY 2005 argues that following the apparent success of market liberalization programs and the evidence of the failure of state-led economic planning in the Philippines, the role of state policy was redefined and narrowed to that of ensuring an undistorted policy environment in which efficient market could operate. Economic development can be assessed regarding the criteria for good governance. Gouache and Han 1999 argues that a well-functioning economic system is one that balances accountability, transparency, and consistency. Let's proceed to the economic goals and policies that the previous Philippine presidents set into response to the said issues. First, let's talk about the major economic goals and policies under Joseph Estrada's presidency. The economic policies of the Estrada administration are the following. He prioritized promising new industry. The Estrada administration approved the Investment Priorities Plan for 2000. The IPP outlines the plans of the priority industries and service areas which are eligible for incentives. The new IPP includes information technology as an industry are separated from the electronics sector and is given pioneer status. The 2000 Investment Priorities Plan embodies the framework within which investor confidence is established and maintained. The very essence of economic development lies not only on the capability to cater to investments in the urban areas and in the metropolis, but more importantly to support sustainable growth in the countryside. Consistent with the action plans of the administration, the 2000 IPP has identified the following goals. First, to alleviate and eventually eradicate poverty through employment generation. Second, to explore other activities which can aid in increasing the country's exports. And third, to develop industries aimed at maintaining competitive advantage. This is in response to a more focused support to industry competitiveness and development. This will highlight the value chain among related industries. Second, pursued investment promotion from abroad. This is to attract more investment into the country. The Estrada administration discussed and promoted our market in bilateral and multilateral bodies abroad. The Estrada administration discussed major reforms and measures to enhance the trade and investment climate. The Estrada administration pursued these efforts during the visit and meetings in China, Japan, United States, Europe, and the ASEAN and APEC. The Estrada administration also installed the honorary investment and trade representatives to cater to interested investors and further attract new investment. Next, he formulated laws and simplified regulation. The Retail Liberalization Act of 2000. In terms of domestic trade, industries, and investment, the Estrada administration signed the Retail Trade Liberalization Act of 2000, which opened the retail trade sector to foreign investors up to 100% ownership, depending on their paid-up capital. The new law allows foreign retail to do business in the country, provided they meet certain qualifications. Next, Developing Rural Industries and Village Enterprises Program. Estrada administration seeks to link clusters of rural industries and village enterprises to large and long projects to effect economies of scale and to reduce inefficiencies in the trading system. Under the DRIVE program, the Estrada administration are transforming the consciousness of small producers from the modality of some subsistence to one that caters larger markets and greater attention to customer satisfaction. The DRIVE program facilitates training in human resource development that was focused on improving productivity and raising production outputs and management standards. Next, supporting rural industries and small-medium enterprises. The Estrada administration promoted the development of the countryside, where the majority of the poor live by providing financial, training, and technical assistance to enterprises engaged in rural industries. Estrada administration released financial assistance under sa Tulong sa Tao microfinancing program, amounting to 64.5 million to 170 non-government organizations, which benefited 9,722 entrepreneurs and generated 14,653 jobs. Next, he supported development of e-commerce. Estrada administration promoted the development of electronic business through the Electronic Commerce Act, which establishes the basic legal framework for a business in the country. It aims to facilitate domestic and international dealings, transactions, arrangements, contracts, and exchanges and storage of information through the utilization of electronic, optical, and similar medium, mode, instrumentality, and technology. Next, he strengthened partnership between government and business sector. Estrada administration established the Economic Mobilization Group to enhance coordination among key economic players and expedite the implementation of measures to stabilize and sustain the economy's growth. And also, he prioritized IT for investment. Under the 2000 Investment Priorities Plan, the Estrada administration prioritized and provided incentives to information technology-related activities to direct foreign and domestic investment flows into this field where the Filipino has a comparative advantage in skills and expertise. These incentives include income tax holiday for a maximum of 8 years and exemption from export requirements. The next president that we are going to discuss is the major economic goals and policies under the Arroyo's presidency. So President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo adopts a policy that is concerned about proactive microeconomic reforms. These reforms clearly set a direction for action in addressing economic issues that her administration have faced. First, macro to micro economic reform program. President Arroyo stressed that for her country to be developed, it must shift its emphasis to microeconomic reforms, which are basically the industry to industry type of reforms. These are hard reforms because at each stage there are well entrenched vested groups and bureaucratic inertia that stand in the way. Agricultural policy. In agriculture, examples of microeconomic reforms would include the removal of quantitative restriction for tariff, the rice, sugar, and corn. Tariff on rice, for example, is expected to lead to the stabilization of domestic prices at some level above world prices. The generation, the generation of tariff revenues that can be used to support farm productivity and the enabling of the rice industry to become more responsive to market conditions. Also, he implemented industrial policy. President Arroyo introduced a productivity enhancing reforms and strategies that support for small and medium enterprises. Filipino micro, small, and medium scale enterprises are collectively the biggest employer of Filipinos, but their contribution to national economic growth has hardly been maximized. So MSMEs have the potential to contribute to higher output, widening of the export base. Next is the service policy. In services, further railway development was being undertaken. A modernized railway system will accelerate the rate of growth of areas adjacent to Metro Manila and strategically link Metro Manila to economic zones and industrial areas. Next, she gives more importance on mobilizing funds policy. Domestic funds mobilization was likewise crucial. This entails a focus on tax collection and tax evasion to jail tax evaders. With regards to the banking system and private sector, non-performing loans are starting to be tackled by recently enacted law on special purpose asset vehicles, and the securitization bill can help raise counterpart funds for housing construction. Also, information and communications technology development strategy. The Arroyo administration acknowledges information and communication technology as a key to finding the country's niche in the global village of the 21st century. ICT was identified to play a major role through e-commerce and e-governance in improving government efficiency and enhancing the competitiveness and productivity of economic sectors. Also, she balanced regional development program. Crucial to the government's overall agenda is the reduction of the disparity between Metro Manila and the rest of the regions. To enhance the roles of local government units as economic units, the Local Development Watch project was put into place to complement the physical infrastructure programs being pursued in areas outside Metro Manila. Let us tackle about the major economic goals and policies under the Noynoy Aquino's presidency. Partly counterbalancing the unattractive external markets were the high government spending, steering the growth rate of fixed capital because of the government's high investment. Again, the Pinoy government used domestic ammunition to try counter the difficult external environment. Thus, since 2012, the Pinoy government had been using fiscal stimulus to counter an unfriendly global economy. This intentionally or unintentionally made the economy more dependent on domestic demand, which should have been conducive to industrial policy. The government seems to have concentrated its economic policies on gaining macroeconomic confidence and increasing the GDP growth rate by increasing government investment and expenditures. This is a worthwhile endeavor, but will not lead to long-run economic development if the economic sectors and the firms do not improve in terms of employment absorption, productivity improvements, interconnectedness, and upgrading to more sophisticated technology and innovative products in more sectoral and microeconomic achievements. So let's proceed on the effectiveness of the programs adopted by the government in addressing the economic issues. During Estrada's from Estrada to Aquino's presidency. So first, we ma- we will be tackle about the effectiveness of the programs during Joseph Ejercito Estrada's presidency. So the economic policies enacted by Estrada administration include the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, which opens retail trade to foreign investment, and the e-commerce law provides the basis for transactions conducted over the internet, and the regional headquarters law grant additional incentives to multinational corporations establishing regional headquarters in the Philippines. Through the following economic policies, it resulted in a good performance in the Philippine economy. And during Gloria Macapagal Arroyo's presidency, the economic policy raised by the Arroyo administration is effective in addressing the economic issues and problems. Looking for what is being accomplished, the Arroyo administration emphasizes two things which are still happening. First is the economic growth. However, it is not sufficient, yet it is still there. Secondly, the different sectors of the economy which are not doing so badly. Some of the performance of Arroyo administration that contributes to the Philippine economy is unfortunately located mainly in the export zones, which has been provided by foreign direct investment rather than Philippine industries. So the extent of the economic growth during the Arroyo administration is concentrated in the export processing zones. In terms of the microeconomic and macroeconomic policies, there is some progress on the micro side of our economy. What really contributed to the development of the economy is the Philippine labor market policies. One is the OFWs. Since the remittances that enter the country increase the country's economic growth because of the acknowledgement of the information and communication technology of the Arroyo administration, the ICT industry in the Philippines proved itself to be the fastest growing sector, particularly in the cellular mobile telephone system development. Arroyo launched a strong Republic Nautical Highway which featured the construction of roll-on roll-off facilities in major ports to connect islands and regional centers. This is very advantageous as it reduces the cost of transporting goods and at the same time promotes domestic tourism, especially in Visayas and Mindanao. Next, during Noynoy Aquino's presidency, the Pinoy government also did not generate a general perception that the high economic growth it achieved translated into better quality of life for the majority of the lower income groups. This is associated with the perceived lack of regional and local development of backward areas, the apparent lack of improvement in health, education, and other social services, and most strikingly, the failure to finally end the agrarian reform program with the massive and widespread distribution of agricultural lands to the small peasants and tenants. In conclusion, the economic problems of different administrations started to from the term of Corazon Aquino up to Noynoy Aquino had similar problems. Mostly, it is brought by common factors such as national calamities, global economic crisis, etc. that affected the country's economic development. To address the different issues and problems, the government set in various policies to attain equitable growth, from Cory Aquino's market-oriented policies to Ramos' liberal economic policies, foreign diplomacy, and up to Estrada's continuation of the economic policy being initiated by the previous administration and President Arroyo's MTPD program that over neoliberalization on trade and free market. The effectivity of the government implemented programs and policies from the administration of Corazon Aquino to Noynoy Aquino resulted to the effectiveness of their programs. The outcomes of the policies are not enough to attain sustainable growth. Cory Aquino and Ramos' economic programs are both failure due to the inconsistency and insufficiency of the policies that they had been implemented. Moreover, Estrada's policy of continuing what the previous administration did has resulted to slightly effectivity in the economic growth, but only in short-run program. Arroyo's program is effective due to her accomplishments such as concentrating the microeconomic sector, improving labor economic policies, and institutional economic method. And that would be the end of my report. Thank you for listening.